Hello, good evening to all. Welcome back. We've disappeared for about a week or so. And as always, we start off thanking the people that watched our few latest episodes. And keep in mind, this is our live streaming platform. So we're kind of very, very informal here. When we have time, we try to put together some videos, hopefully produced much better with noise correction, etc. But for now, this is just kind of a kind of free flow thought, etc. We always have our open chat. I'm going to try and open that and say hello. Let's just say hello world. If anyone wants to write to us and say anything, you're perfectly welcome to. Questions, comments, insults, whatever you feel you need to do, it's up to you. So I'm picking up from the last session. And once again, I'll just repeat, Deleuze Modeste is kind of, we're reviewing right now in a very superficial way because, that could be a lifetime work about the relationship principally between Gilles Deleuze and Karl Marx, but also the entire, let's call it the milieu, the entire ambient in France at that time, and how Marx kind of soaks in and eventually becomes this kind of Freudo Marxism, psychoanalysis and Marxism, which was very, very popular in the early 1970s in France, especially Paris, in the intellectual circles. So, and in the last few live sessions, we've looked into the general historical context of how that happened, and have also emphasized how important it is to understand the history of philosophy and the context in which things take place. So if anyone has seen the last few podcasts, I do not want to be repetitive, but just check them out because history and the history of philosophy go hand in hand, and you have to understand the context in which things happen. Otherwise, you can be susceptible to fall into all kinds of traps and difficulties, etc., etc. So, for example, what we talked about, we're still looking at this interview between an interview with Isabelle Gare and Anne Sauvagnargues, who are two French literary authorities on Marxism and the culture of Marxism, specifically in France. And the one interesting thing, amongst many others, we saw in the last streaming session was that, according to Isabelle Gare, Deleuze and Guattari in the Anti-Oedipe, the Anti-Oedipus, according to her, had this very idealist vision of Marxism, which in her opinion was based on a Fordian or Fordist vision of Marxism. So, once again, we can spend all kinds of time, but that's not what I want to do. I just want to point out these important facts. It's kind of so, in the early 1970s, Jacques Lacan revolutionizes the idea of the subconscious or the unconscious, is not being what Deleuze and Guattari would call a theater, meaning you are condemned your whole life in your unconsciousness and in your subconscious to see a replay of the various traumas that you lived in your infancy and your early childhood. No, this is a very Freudian idea where we all know the Oedipal triangle: mommy, daddy, phallus, the hidden object, the desire for the mother, the authority of the father, etc., etc. We've gone over this quite a lot in the last few podcasts, but there was this general idea that your unconsciousness was just basically a replay of all of those traumas that you suffered in your infancy on the way to becoming a man or a woman in society. Lacan breaks from this. We have early Lacan and late Lacan. And as we said before, there's a very big difference. And Deleuze and Guattari will have a relation to both early and late Lacan. But Lacan essentially may not be the first, but one of the first to say that no, the unconscious is not just a theater. It's not just replays of your traumas in your infancy. It is a factory of production, which does include your young traumas, your traumas when you were in infancy. However, it also relates to the whole social field, and therefore, when you say that, you're saying that this is, in my opinion, quite post-structuralist. That means that everything is relative to the time, the period, your culture, and everything is relative to that social field. So that is variable over time and throughout history. So obviously that means that a child born in, let's say in ancient Rome, has a completely different production of his unconscious, because that is relative to the norms and the customs of what happened in ancient Rome. A child born in Freud's time in Vienna in the late 19th century had an obviously complete different social milieu. It varies over time throughout history, and today it might seem pretty obvious, but back in France in the 60s, when Marx and Freud were very, very popular, there was a very highly structuralist interpretation, meaning essentially throughout time, this doesn't vary because your unconsciousness is completely based on your childhood traumas. But when Lacan says, look, it's not just that, it is that, but it also includes the whole social milieu in which you live in. Therefore, we pass to a post-structuralist interpretation, meaning that is strictly determined by space and time. And it varies over history. So to me, that seems to be very, very easy and logical. Hang on, let's go on to our live tweet. I'm just going to say, let's ask a question. I'm just going to say, what do you... Oh my goodness. Hang on. onto this here. What do you think about that? Feel free to answer. What do you think about that? And perfect. So it's in that sense, and I said that because when Isabelle Gare is saying that in her opinion, and I'm not saying she's right or wrong, and I'm not even saying that I'm qualified to give a good answer. When she says that Deleuze, in her opinion, Deleuze and Guattari's definition of Marxist is essentially Fordist. And I find that kind of interesting because if you think about, for example, if you go back to our early podcasts, we were talking about the relationship between Immanuel Kant and René Descartes, Cartesian, and then the criticism of Kant against Descartes was he was saying Descartes cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. However, what Kant says is, okay, all good, all cool, but you forgot to qualify that, meaning under which terms as a qualifier do you exist? Once again, you say, I think, therefore I am, but how? Are you're missing a qualification, or you missed a step, and that's, if it's difficult to understand, I can give you the example of Spinoza when we have substance, attributes, and modes. Spinoza is very specific on this. No, you have substance, the attributes are qualified through substance, and the modes are qualified through the attributes. And Descartes is just using two things. He's saying, because I think, I must exist. And Kant is saying you're not qualifying correctly the fact that you exist, because you are not saying how you exist. That's a very simple explanation, but it's not too far from the truth of the matter. So the reason I cite this is because if you're just saying, Lacan is saying, okay, the unconsciousness is not a theater, not a repetition of your childhood traumas and fantasies or whatever. It's also relative to your social field. So what Lacan does is he brings Karl Marx into the picture. Why? Because Karl Marx is beyond being, I believe, if not the first, if one of the first, or at least the first to concretely recognized the social formation of capitalism, and that we live in a capitalistic society, no longer a despotic society like before. And then that's Deleuze and Guattari. A despotic society means everything is coded. You have kings, churches, and everything has a meaning. And capitalism is a completely different system. And then Marx will get into production and the means of production. And what Isabelle Gare is kind of saying is that, in her opinion, it's not sufficient for Lacan, and she's saying also Deleuze and Pierre-Félix Guattari in the Anti-Oedipe, it's not enough to just say Marx. Why? Because she's saying that Marx in those times was used as a kind of generalized theory of production, because Marx obviously brings to center stage this whole issue of production, that humans are essentially creative, they produce, and therefore he analyzed, the whole capitalist system based on this idea of production. So when Lacan says that the unconscious, is essentially productive, it's an issue of production. Therefore, what happens is a tendency to just use Marx in a very generic way and say, okay, your unconsciousness is production. It produces, but like Kant with Descartes, you're not qualifying that, meaning how does it produce? And I think that's exactly the same as Kant's critique of Descartes, no? I think, therefore I am. And Kant says, okay, I get it, but you're not qualifying things. I am, in what way am I? No, how am I? You need to go further. You need to go to another step. And Kant with Descartes said, I think, therefore I am in space and time. So what Isabelle Gare is saying here is that you're not qualifying it. It's not enough to say Marx is just this vague, abstract idea of production. I produce, no? What Isabelle Gare, when she says that in her opinion, Deleuze and Guattari were using Marx, and we would have to check late Lacan. Right now, I'm not so sure about that. But you can't just say production in general and introduce Marx in that way, no? You have to qualify it. You have to say production, how, what, under which historical conditions. You have to qualify it. And so, like, right now, I repeat, this is a live session, so in a few minutes I'm gonna have to have a cigarette, otherwise I'm gonna faint. This stuff is not so easy for me either, but I'm just gonna go very quickly and do a stupid thing and go to Wikipedia just to get the idea, because we have Marxism, we have Taylorism, we have Keynesianism, there are all kinds of definitions of production, which are all equally complex. And that's the only point I want to make. I have no answer here. But, if you're just going to say Marx is equal to production, Isabelle is saying that is not enough. You have to go further and explain what mode of production. So Fordism is one mode of production amongst many others. And her criticism of Deleuze and Guattari, and I don't say agree or disagree, but I think she's brilliant for bringing up that point. No, we have to qualify things. So I'm going to say, why does she say Fordism? And I think her general point is there's a certain naivete, there's a certain naive intuition on the part of Deleuze and Guattari for production, because Deleuze and Guattari, as we know, are going to pick up the torch from Lacan and kind of invert him in the Anti-Oedipus, and they're going to say that yes, you have the desiring unconscious, no, and it's the desiring machines which are productive machines, and hence the relation to Marx. But I can't even find this in English. Well, hang on. Let's just, I'm gonna throw this very quickly into Pages here. Let's hope it behaves correctly. So we have Fordism is an industrial engineering and manufacturing system that serves as the basis of modern social and labor economic systems that support industrialized, standardized mass production and mass consumption. The concept is named after Henry Ford. It is used in social, economic, and management theory about production, working conditions, consumption, and related phenomena, especially regarding the 20th century. It describes an ideology of advanced capitalism centered around the American socio-economic systems in place in the post-war economic boom. So, important thing is, given the fact that after Lacan we are now accepting hence I was just thinking Michel Foucault, not important, but that everything is relative to its place in history. Everything is in constant change, so like think about Fordism in 2024. That's a pretty interesting thing, in my opinion, to read about. But we don't want to spend too much time on this. But one question I'm asking myself is, I'm in the English Fordism, but in the French is quite different. Hang on. Okay, well, one thing I've just noticed is that Wikipedia in English and in French is completely different. But I don't know too much time on this. So, can I find the English one again? Hello. This is a little bit long. Let's run through this really quickly. But my point is that you have Fordism, Taylorism, Keynesianism. When you state Marx mode of production, you have to qualify. And Isabelle is saying that, in her opinion, Deleuze and Guattari have a Fordist vision of production, and that would mean they would have a Fordist production of the unconscious. So very quickly, what do we have here? Fordism is the eponymous manufacturing system designed to produce standardized, low-cost goods and affords its workers decent enough wages to buy them. It has also been described as a model of economic expansion and technological progress. This is the important part. Based on mass production, the manufacture of standardized products in huge volumes using special purpose machinery and unskilled labor. Although Fordism was a method used to improve productivity in the automotive industry, the principle could be applied to any kind of manufacturing process. So, in our case, as we stated before, Lacan is saying the consciousness is a kind of manufacturing process. So major success stemmed from three major principles: the standardization of the product, and this is only important, and like for me, I would need to drink at least a bottle of whiskey and then spend a couple of weeks trying to bring this back to Deleuze and Guattari to fully understand Isabelle Garo's criticism, because this is, you're really going to have to think here. So I'm just like running over it very quickly, just to throw it out there. If anyone is interested in this is, in my opinion, a very interesting issue. I'm just superficially throwing things out there and hoping it may be of use to someone, and it does interest me quite a bit. So, the standardization of the product. Nothing is handmade, but everything is made through machines and molds by unskilled workers. So, think about Deleuze and Guattari. Here, machines. Obviously, they have a different conception of machines. However, there is a kind of parallel here. The employment of assembly lines, which use special purpose tools or equipment to allow common skilled workers to contribute to the finished product. Once again, here, think about Deleuze and the importance of series. No, this is this is a recurring theme in Deleuze, the series. So, assembly line, series, not the same thing, obviously. However, there is something in common there. Workers are paid for higher living wages so they can afford to purchase the products they make. So, not going to come to that, but if following Isabelle's comments, she's saying essentially that when Deleuze and Guattari pick up on Jacques Lacan and propose a Marxist concept, an unqualified Marxist concept of production, she is qualifying it. She's saying, in my opinion, these bros were Fordists, meaning they were a qualified system of Marxism amongst many others. And her criticism is she believes that they were essentially Fordists. And she's essentially saying, in my opinion, I am not qualified, that it's relative to the 1920s in America, relative to the 1930s in America, where you have this idea of standardization, machines, obviously the proletariat, the unskilled worker, assembly lines, and then also it's important, workers are paid higher living wages so they can afford to produce the products they make. So that's all very, very relative, I think. Relative and important. Obviously, today, if in 2024, are workers being paid higher living wages? I think you all know the answer, so I don't have to say that. So times change, we move on to different modes of production, different practical applications of Marx. So the important part, the principles coupled with a technological revolution during the Henry Ford's time allowed for his revolutionary form of labor to flourish. His assembly line was revolutionary, though not original, as it had previously been used at slaughterhouses. So, sorry if I laugh, but if you've seen any films by Antonioni post World War II films, you'll understand the point. I mean, am I working for Amazon? In the in those huge shipping buildings, or am I in a slaughterhouse? What's the difference? That's essentially the point. And I don't mean to laugh because, unfortunately, for many people, that is the reality today, and hence, in my opinion, an urgent need to qualify Marxism, to change it, to do something new for the workers, And then once again, we go back to Isabelle. She's saying Deleuze and Guattari have a very naive vision. Their idea of bringing Marx to subconsciousness is Fordist, meaning they think, it's all about eternal production and growth and, blah, blah, blah. And she's saying in reality, models of production change over time. And I think today, quite obviously, think about this is too easy, but like the factories of Apple in China, which no one talks about, where people were jumping off the roof and they had to put nets around the whole building to prevent too many suicides. No, so Fordism. Ford was a unique time in which there was just this massive surplus of consumerism. Ford invented the first cheap diesel car that coincided with the discovery in the United States in Texas with all the oil wells. So just by contingency, Henry Ford created this really cheap, efficient car for everyone, and the United States discovered unlimited oil, and therefore it was just everything was cool, everything was great, everything was positive. The future would just be constant progress. We can only go up from here, etc., etc. Have we gone up from there? Good question. Not so sure. We're talking about electric cars right now, but before Ford invented his first affordable car, electric cars were in use. They were the first cars. They were less dangerous. Gas cars were considered dangerous. You had your crank to run it up, and you risked explosions, etc., etc. But Henry Ford, obviously a genius, fixed that and made an affordable car for everyone. And at the same time, all this oil was discovered in the United States, and therefore, everything took off from there. But what's important here is if that is going to be a kind of model for the unconscious. Isabelle Gare is saying that Deleuze and Guattari are kind of basing themselves on this sort of optimistic idea of this positive idea of production, where the worker himself, can buy his product that he makes, and Isabelle is saying that. Kind of complicated, but there are many other models, and it's obviously means of production are historically relative. So, like I said before, I don't think in 2024 we're living the times that Ford did, which were exceptionally rich and positive and optimistic, etc., etc. Forget about the slaughterhouses. His most original contribution to the modern world was breaking down complex tasks into simpler ones with the help of specialized tools. Simpler tasks created interchangeable parts that could be used the same way every time. That allowed for a very adaptive flexibility, creating an assembly line that could change its constituent components to meet the needs of the product being assembled. In reality, the assembly line had existed before Ford, although not quite in the same effectiveness as he would create. His real accomplishment was recognizing the potential by breaking it all down into its components, only to build it back up again and in a more effective and productive combination, thereby producing an optimum method for the real world. So, once again, my point here, and I think this is a very, very, very important point, and I'm just repeating myself. I won't spend too long, but Isabelle is saying you can't just take Marx and say it's production. No, your consciousness, your dreams, your desires, that what goes through your subconscious and eventually with your consciousness, all of that metaphysical soup, that involves your whole history. It involves your whole history relative to the social, the socius in which you've grown up in, you've lived. You have all this soup around you, positive, negative, all kinds of crap. No, but what she's saying is that you qualify him. You can't just say Marx as this kind of idealized form of production. No, for Marx, it's like in his vision, the goal was for society to create machines that would be under control of the state, which would do everything, and mankind could dedicate itself to what it was truly destined to do, or genetically capable of doing, meaning dedicating itself to higher purposes, poetry, whatever, fishing, art. So Marx, it seems dated and absurd, but his ultimate goal was just to leave all the production to the machines, and mankind, can dedicate itself to higher purposes. No. But at the same time, I repeat, that is not qualified. So you can have a Marxian pure mode of production, Fordian, Taylorist, Keynesian, and I'm sure there will be many, many others. But that's, you have to understand how we are defining production. It's just not like an abstract thing like the mind produces, the unconsciousness just produces, just makes shit. No, you can't have a structuralist interpretation like maybe the early Lacan or Freud, where everything is fixed and it's a repetition of childhood trauma. That's not production, but it produces, but it has to produce according to certain, I wouldn't say rules, but there has to be, you have to go further. You have to define how it is producing, no? And that's, in my opinion, a whole really interesting thing to look into. And, we just saw it. I mean, reading this, it doesn't seem to me Fordism to be too far from Deleuze and Guattari. Standardization, machines. We have different interpretations of machines. Assembly lines. We have series. When we say workers are paid higher living wages, you could say that maybe Deleuze and Guattari were kind of had a Fordist interpretation of Marxist production, meaning, kind of naive, or maybe in the 1970s, that was still a valid interpretation of Marxism, and then things changed after. I repeat again, a very adaptable flexibility, an assembly line that could change its constituent components to meet the needs of the product being assembled. So this whole idea of a series, an assembly line of constitutive components, Deleuze are going to propose the idea of flows, and the machines cut flows, but I mean, there's sort of some kind of relation there, and I would not say, absolutely, I would never say that I agree, because I would really, like I said before, I would need a couple bottles of whiskey and a long time to think about that. I'm slow, I'm stupid. Have been defined as a pro-Russian simp and intellectually lazy. So I would need a lot of time to try and figure that out. But I do want to make this point, like it's very, very important, because the whole point of this detour was to state that, in my opinion, Deleuze did not want his last book to be the grandeur of Karl Marx. So I've already talked about that enough. I do not want to go back into that. But in the meantime, what I'm saying is that instead of sitting there, selling books and discussing things that, because the book doesn't exist, there's not even like one note or no proof of it. The people, as I have explained before, the people who try and sell that to you are of a highly dubious nature, and thus the need to understand the history of philosophy, context, and know what you're actually talking about. But at the same time, if you're interested in Deleuze, Guattari, and Marxism, in my opinion, this is the way. Absolutely, there's a lot of open questions, so much interesting stuff. Marx is not exhausted. Neither are Deleuze. Neither is Deleuze. Neither are Deleuze and Guattari. It's a very, very rich and complicated field if you want to get into that, and hence the importance of this interview I've been showing you for the last 10 podcasts, I think, with Isabelle Gare and Anne Sauvagnargues, because they are authorities on this stuff. They spent their whole lives working on Marxism, Marxism in France, Marxism, Deleuze, Guattari, Lacan. They know what they are talking about now. So my point is, leave it alone. The Deleuze, grandeur de Marx. In my opinion, this is where your divining rod should take you, and you point it to the ground, and underneath you will find or oil or water or gold or whatever. But this is a whole extremely interesting field, which is still an unexplored territory. So following the spirit, I'm going to disappear for 30 seconds. I'm going to grab a cigarette. I repeat, this is a live podcast, so we allow ourselves to do these, indulge in vulgar vices. And we will be right back. Promise, very, very quick. And because I want to show you something that is much, much, much more important than all of this for anyone that's interested in learning more about Gilles Deleuze. In my opinion, it is the most important resource, and I want to share it with you. Absolutely. Many of you will know it, but maybe for someone new, this is really where you can learn so much. And I'm going to get it to you. So hang on. Let me get a cigarette. I'll be right back. My webcam's probably going to try and follow me. Oh my God. Don't follow me. Oh. Oh, got it. Okay, back as promised. Just for irony's sake, I noticed on YouTube, for many reasons, we have very, very few viewers when we do live streaming. But I noticed we had an unusually high volume of viewers on, I think it was called Disarticulations 12, which is, ironically, I was live streaming and accidentally turned off my microphone. So, like the last hour, you can't even hear what I'm saying. And that's like the highest viewed podcast. So I have no clue what that means in a practical sense. So I don't know if I'm like a pantomime or something, but that got a crazy amount of views, and what I'm not sure why, but obviously I do appreciate every view, and obviously I never sit here, as I've always said, and say subscribe, because I find that frankly quite embarrassing. If someone is interested, they will subscribe. If they're not interested, they won't subscribe. But thanks, we do have a few new subscribers, and I appreciate it. Thank you, and hopefully we can be useful. Let's write something on our live feed. No one answers anyway, so what can we say on our live feed? Let's say, tell me something about Karl Marx. Oh shit. Sorry, Spanish keyboard. Something about Karl Marx. Okay, so the question is out there. First, the answer will win God knows what. Just joking. But seriously, I want to get into this site. Given that it is late, I'm probably not even going to get back into the interview with Isabelle, Gare, and Sauvagnargues. We'll try and do that tomorrow night. But I wanted to do this detour because I think this is very important. Exactly. I'm going to see if I can share the window. But we have pages here. In my opinion, for learning and understanding Deleuze, this is not the only site. There is also a website dedicated to the University of Vincennes in Paris. But this is quite simply why is this window? Anyway, I'm going to try and put this in Web Deleuze. WebDeleuze.com. Let me see if I have to do this. No. Format. I hate this. Let's make that bigger. There. WebDeleuze.com. I'm going to put that on right now, and this is a website, and there is another one at Vincennes, which is even better. And I still think that Richard Pinhas also has, if it's not Web Deleuze, Richard Pinhas is also dedicated a web page to transcripts of the lectures. of Gilles Deleuze when he was a teacher, which was all the way up until, well, I'm guessing the late 80s. And, these are where Deleuze talks to his students about everything he's working on. And this for me is always, always the most valuable repository. And I always repeat, yes, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of authors out there who have done books, but always go directly to Deleuze himself. Like if you're interested in the anti-deep and you're having problems, just go back to Deleuze, no? Obviously, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You can read a book, by all of the various authors and make money and commentate on it, etc., etc. But if you go back to Deleuze, especially in his teachings, in his lectures, where he's talking, to his students, this is such an invaluable resource because it will make the things that look so complicated very, very simple. So, given the fact that we're talking about Marx, and once again, for the 18th time, I'm going to be boring and say the point of this podcast is not, I'm not telling you the truth. The truth does not exist. I'm trying to give out information which can be helpful and useful to navigate the understanding of Gilles Deleuze and Pierre-Félix Guattari. I would love to try and take a book by Pierre-Félix Guattari and do some, live streaming and read it because Guattari's writings for me are like, wow, they're so complicated that I get totally lost instantly. So we would need like, I'm not sure, whiskey, rum, it depends. But let me see. Let me see if we can do this. I'm going to shut this off. Turn this on. What in God's name is this? We don't know. This is definitely not what we're looking for. No, it could be. Hang on. Yes, but now I have to. Let me see if I can move that over. I have to lock this. This is unlocked. Hello. Oh, there we go. So, I'm not going to touch that. Let me lock that. So, these are transcripts of all of the lectures that Deleuze did over his entire life regarding all of the books he wrote. So what I've done is you just go to webdeleuze.com and you'll have transcripts. As far as I know, it's available in French and Spanish. English, there is another site that occasionally translates from time to time, but I would recommend absolutely to go into the French. Just look at it in French. If you don't understand, it doesn't matter. Just look at it, go through it, because you just have to, like a sponge, you have to absorb a little bit of the French language because languages are different, and then just throw it into DeepL or Google Translate or whatever AI is fashionable at the moment. Translation is a pretty advanced good phase. So if I just went into Web Deleuze, for example, and let's see if I can do this. I have to get that bigger. So I have my search. So we're going to search, and I will do Marx. And then all of these entries right here are courses he did were transcribed, and then this pops out and highlights every time Gilles Deleuze spoke about Karl Marx in his classes for students. So we can go by date. This starts in 1971 with L'Anti-Oedipe et Mille Plateaux. So I think we'll just spend 5 minutes and then we'll shut it down here. Let's go to the early one, The Nature of Flows. That's 1412, the 14th of December, 1971, the 21st of December. Let's just go to the earliest one. There we go. Nature des Flux, that's in French. Naturaleza de los Flujos, that's in Spanish. So there's a mix between French and Spanish, but the very first one should be, oh no, we have one in English, 1971. So occasionally there's English too. So once I open that up, let's just look at the beginning just for fun, no? Forget about, let me see if I can fix this window here. Hello. Okay. I'm going to disappear totally so we can look at this text. Hang on. Let me unlock it. Oh my God, I'm back again for better or for worse. Okay, so this was translated. This is from the 14th of December 1971. Translated by Karen Isabelle Othanya, I'm guessing. And let's look. I would like to pursue the problem of the economy of flows. Last time, someone wanted a more precise definition of flows, more precise, that is, and keep in mind when we're talking about Marx, that flows is fundamental because Deleuze and Guattari's definition, let me see if my audio is working, it should be working, definition of a machine, let's say revolutionizes or changes the deterministic teleological Marxist conception of a technological productive machine. And Deleuze, as we've seen in our last podcast, Deleuze and Guattari will bring that new meaning of machines based on flows to essentially everything, being technological production, the subconsciousness, to everything. So I would like to pursue the problem of the economy of flows. Last time, someone wanted a more precise definition of flows. More precise, that is, than something which flows upon the socius. What I call the socius is not society, interesting, but rather a particular social instance which plays the role of a full body. Very quickly, I think partial bodies, full bodies, for me, we started this series off on an essay by Herman Rappaport on the war in Vietnam, that interpreted in a Deleuzian sense, which really explains, in my opinion, in the best way, the difference between a full and partial body. I may, let's go ahead a little bit. I may or may not try and explain it pretty quickly, but every society presents itself as a socius, or a full body upon which all kinds of flows flow and are interrupted, and the social investment of desire is this basic operation of the break flow. So we have a socius, which is a full body. Upon which all kinds of flows flow and are interrupted, and the social investment of desire is this basic operation of the break flow, to which we can easily give the name of schizophrenic. It is not yet important for us to have a real definition of flows, but it is important as a starting point, to have a nominal definition, and this nominal definition must provide us with an initial system of concepts as a point of departure for our search for a nominal definition of flows. I'll take a recent study by specialists in the flows of political economy, Flows and Stocks, by Daniel Antier. Stocks and flows are two primary notions in modern political economy, remarked upon by Keynes. So, once again, excuse me, let's light up this cigarette so you can cuss more in your faces. As Isabelle Gare helped us to understand, qualify Marxism, qualify production, it changes over time, no? So here we're talking Deleuze, who is talking about Daniel Antier, and he's discussing modern political economy, remarked upon Keynes. So, once again, here we're shooting this information out. We don't know. Let's do a live tweet. Hang on. Oh, it's just fun. No, that's right. But I'm gonna write. Do you think that Deleuze because Deleuze and Guattari are two, when they write together, they are Deleuze and Guattari, but even their opinions on Marx, when Deleuze writes as Deleuze and Guattari writes as Deleuze, are two different entities. So you have to consider, am I talking about Gilles Deleuze, Pierre-Félix Guattari, or am I talking about Gilles Deleuze and Pierre-Félix Guattari? No? Do you think that Deleuze was, it's a stupid question, but I'm trying to make a point, was Fordist? Was he Fordist? Or was he closer to Keynes? That's my question. Feel free to answer. The first person to answer will receive a free t-shirt like mine. Can we see that? Impossible. Hang on. Let me shut this off. You will receive a free Fidel Castro t-shirt. Anyone that has nothing better to do than to answer me will receive a Fidel Castro t-shirt. So, stocks and flows are two primary notions in modern political economy. Let me check my audio. Am I still here? Yes. Remarked upon by Keynes, such that we find in Keynesian economy the first great theory of flows. Very, very interesting, no? In his general theory of employment, interest, and money, Antier informs us that from the economic point of view, we can call flows the values of the quantities of goods and services or money that are transmitted from one pole to another. Our last session, we had tried to show, so this is Gilles Deleuze talking about Keynes and, I don't want to get the word wrong, Keynesian economy. And Deleuze is saying, first of all, you have to have concepts here. So once again, as we know from what is philosophy, a philosopher creates concepts, and therefore, before diving into qualifying Marxism, first, Deleuze has stated before that the first step is the creation of concepts. So, Entier informs us that from the economic point of view, we can call flows the values of the quantities of goods and services. The values of the quantities of goods and services or money that are transmitted from one pole to the other. So value is variable, and therefore it could be defined as a flow. The first concept to be placed in relation with that of flows is that of a pole. So you need a concept of a flow, which, as Deleuze just stated, is the value of the quantities of goods and services or money. That's the first concept here, no? On the concept of flow, and we are in Marxian territory, but now he's citing Keynes. Gare is saying Fordist, and once again, the point is not to determine and say on this podcast, not to say this or that, but to let you know, think about this, figure it out for yourselves, and it is fundamental to understanding the anti-Oedip. People will tell you today that the anti-Oedipus is not relevant because families have changed, it's dated. Obviously, certain things are dated, no? Spinoza, the Christ of philosophers, had very dated views on a lot of things, like women, for example. He was not very modern in his relationship to women. But in the end, the concepts remain, and as Deleuze has always stated, concepts are like living things. They change over time, no? They're like metaphysical fish swimming out there, and they adapt to their time. So this fish will transmutate according to the milieu, the socius, the full body he finds himself in. And so Deleuze says here that the first concept to be placed in relation with that of flows is that of a pole. So we start with flows. Concept, not a concept. I really don't understand what he's saying, but he's saying the first concept to be placed in relation with that of flows. Let's presume flows is a concept, but you're going to have another concept which will go into relation with flows. So once again, if you are interested in Gilles Deleuze, you must know that there is no one, there is two. That's the famous zigzag, which he was criticized for, but I never understood why. If you watch on YouTube, the Abécédaire of Gilles Deleuze, and they ask him about the Big Bang, the Big Bang, no? I think Claire Parnay asked him, do you believe in the Big Bang? And Deleuze just sits there and laughs. He kind of, and you understand why he's laughing, because he according, for Deleuze, philosophy, science, in what is philosophy, everything has its role. Science should be about empiricism, not like today in 2024 when scientists are like talking about the God particle, science for Deleuze was empiricism, as it should be, So if the new Hubble telescope discovers amazing new images, that doesn't, you can't go and make metaphysical questions. Scientists, according to Deleuze, cannot make concepts. That's not their job. They're not capable. They're not trained to do that. A philosopher does that, no? So science for Deleuze should stick to empirical things. Philosophy to the creation of concepts. Art is another issue. So Deleuze just kind of laughs, and when he's laughing, you know what he's saying. He's saying like, these typical fuckhead scientists, that think that with empiricism, they can explain the origin of the universe. It's, he just kind of laughs at it. But then he says, in the end, for me, everything starts with two. There's no one. There's no one Big Bang. You have to have a relation. That is the essence of existence for Gilles Deleuze. You have two. In the relation, he says, that's the zigzag. That's the external relation. According to Hume, that's the becoming. And for Deleuze, the becoming is what counts, not the two entities. It's the becoming, which is, I would say, ontological. And God knows who's going to butcher me for that kind of statement. But what Deleuze is interested in is the external relation, the becoming. So in that sense, when you create concepts, he's hesitant about saying, I think, the flow is the first one, but then immediately you have the concept of poles. That's the second concept, which immediately creates a becoming or a relation with flows. Hang on. We're live here. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom. Be right back. Up. Oh. Okay. My apologies for that. So, first concept, flow. Second concept, poles. So, going on. The first concept to be placed in relation with that of flows is that of the pole. A flow, inasmuch as it flows on the socius. The socius, we know, is the full body of a society, enters by one pole and exits by another. So we have flows, which is a concept, and then we have poles. And so a flow enters into one pole and exits by another. Quite simple. At our last lesson, we had tried to show that flows implicated codes, in the sense that a flow could be called economic insofar as something passed. So something passed between a minimum of two poles, and where something else blocked it and made it past. The example given was that of the rules of alliance in so-called primitive societies. So, only comment here is that Deleuze, with the concept of the flow and the concept of poles, is not limiting that only to capitalistic society. He's going all the way back and saying that those are concepts which pre-exist and go all the way back into the so-called primitive societies, which obviously, if you know a little bit, are pre-despotic societies, tribal societies, let's call them primitive. Today it might be, I don't know, kind of racist or whatever. I'm not politically correct. I apologize. Where taboos represent a blockage of the flow of possible marriages, the first permitted marriages, i.e., for example, the first permitted incests called preferential unions, which are in fact hardly ever realized, represents something like the first modes of passage. Something passes, something is blocked. This blockage taking the form of incest taboos. Something passes, the preferential unions. Something blocks it and makes it pass. For example, the maternal uterine uncle, don't know. But I'm going to end here, but there were 2 points to doing this, because Deleuze is kind of laying the foundations of his interpretation of the mode of production, which relates to Marx. Here he's clearly citing Keynes, which is very interesting. And we've spoke about at the beginning of this live session about Isabelle Gare's idea that Deleuze and Guattari were essentially Marxian Fordists, and that absolutely may not be the case. But it's a very long and complicated issue. However, the more important point was to let you know that Web Deleuze, and I hope I've adequately shown you that this is just the best resource. These are the actual transcriptions of the lessons Deleuze gave to his students. So obviously, he wasn't talking, he wasn't writing books. He was talking to students. So he obviously had to, teach his ideas and concepts at a kind of, at a level adequate for students to understand. And that's why, there's so many of these published online, and they're an absolute treasure. So if he even gives us a very good concept of how he's reworking the idea of a Marxist concept of machine. Deleuze is saying, look, everything starts with concepts. Great. This is 1971, huh? So Deleuze, what he wrote in What is Philosophy, he was practicing, way before. He was just crystallizing that in What is Philosophy. And so, for example, from the economic point of view, he gives us a clear example that you have a flow. Everything is a flow, because everything is essentially in a state of becoming. Everything is in a state of movement, no? And therefore everything is a flow. I hate to be vulgar, but if you go to the first page of the Anti-Oedipe, we shit, that's a flow. We piss, that's a flow. We eat, that's a flow. Hairstyles are a flow within a determined society, a socius, no? Everything is determined to be in a state of constant flux and movement by Deleuze. So, if that is the concept of a flow, everything is a flow. Everything. And it's always been that way since the beginning. But at the same time, you have the concept of poles. And he is giving us an example of explaining more or less coding. So let's look at this one more time. This is Keynes. This is Keynes who states us that from the economic point of view, we can call flows the values of the quantities and goods and services or money that are transmitted from one pole to another. Hence the concept by Gilles Deleuze of a pole, a flow, in as much as it flows on the socius, enters by one pole and exits by another. At our last session, we had tried to show that flows implicate codes in the sense that a flow could be called economic insofar as something passed. So all this stuff may sound complicated, but if you just think about it, you will discover that there is what is my camera doing here? Track me, follow me, whatever, focus on me. Thank you. That a flow will enter into an entry pole and an exit pole, and between those two poles, coding will occur. So, a flow could be called economic insofar as something passed and where something else blocked it and made it pass. So, oh yeah. Hang on. Oh, I'm not sure if I wanna. No, we'll probably we'll get into this a little bit further to clear it out in the next lesson, but we're still here. Everything is a flow. However, a flow, oh my God, I don't want to use vulgar examples, but oh, who gives a fuck? At the worst, we'll get blocked. We can't be demonetized because we don't monetize anything. So you have a flow. You have, I'm trying to give a practical example. I might be doing something stupid here. And hang on. I'm going to write on our chat here. Where in God's name is our chat? Please let me know if this is stupid. Okay, so on our incredibly popular and active live chat, I have asked everyone to tell me if this is stupid or not. I'm trying to make a really simple metaphor. We have a flow and two poles. So, and it's the only thing, it's not eloquent, it's the only thing that comes into mind. So let's talk about urinating, pissing, for example, no? That is a flow because that comes from liquid. if I drink water, that comes from my tap or the water bottle. If I drink anything else, it's a liquid. I drink that. So I drink that, and there is a flow. That water will flow into. I'm not a biology expert, but into my, let's just say, my body, and then that flow. Let's say. Uh, oh, I'm risking it big time here. But let's say once that flow enters my body, that is a pole, no? Because the water is just not freely flowing. It's not like a river. It's entered my body, and my body is something different. It's extraneous to a fluid in itself as a fluid, like the river flows into the sea. Therefore, let's say it passed the first pole, it goes into my body, but it is going to be somehow coated because it's going to be passing into my lower organs, and the flow will be interrupted, meaning that if I drink a liter of water or whatever, my body will interrupt that flow. And maybe, guys, girls, excuse my vulgarity, I should probably translate it a better way, but maybe I'll take a piss. Sorry about that. After 2 or 3 hours, meaning my body, the second pole would be my biological parts down there, which are regulating the flow and stopping it. Otherwise, I couldn't survive as an organism. If the flow were not interrupted of water, I would drink water and I would piss as I drank water. You just need the time to come down the body, and so you'd have a minor interruption, but it would still be a pure flow, no? But the lower body parts are coding and interrupting that flow and stopping it. And then in 1, 2, 5, it depends, whatever, hours, that flow will begin again. But in the meantime, you can say, and this is a dumb example, but I don't think it's too wrong. You could say that flow has been coded because I know I drank it, and I'm like, oh, fuck, no, I just drank 2 liters of water. I'm gonna have to piss my brains out, in about 2, or beer or whatever, and, it's like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to piss my brains out in 2 hours. But your body will still interrupt the flow. In the meantime, it has been coded, no, because that you're going to have to, you're aware of the fact that you're going to have to go to the bathroom in whichever time. And therefore, in a certain sense, in a social milieu, with our language, with our culture, our understanding, you've coded it. That's I had to take a pee. I mean, it's all coded. And Deleuze here gives an even better example, where he says that we go back to primitive societies and we talk about incest. And I think this is more from Mille Plateau, but once again, I don't want to be too vulgar, but it's, we all know it's human nature for people, men, women today. I'm not going to get into all the gender stuff, but whatever. People tend to want to couple, for example, or reproduce. Hopefully today it's still kind of true. Even no, I won't say that. I'll get into trouble. But you could say you have this flow of what Deleuze would call unions. You just Today, the age is very young. Maybe today, kids at 12 years old are promiscuous, interested in sex. Maybe 50 years ago, post-war, at 20 or 18 or whatever, they were, promiscuous. Sex. I mean, it's a part of human nature, no? Kids like to beep, beep, beep. I don't want to be vulgar. And so Deleuze is saying that if you go back into time, way, way back to pre-despotic societies, even pre-primitive societies, like everyone, a boy, a girl, would get together and do certain things and reproduce, kind of a natural phenomena. However, you would have also there two poles, as Deleuze said, and something passes the first pole, and the first pole here, I believe, is, kind of, let's go to primitive societies, a girl, a boy of whatever age would get together, become boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever. But Deleuze is saying that something passes, meaning just take two poles. We have the flow. The flow is sexuality, for example, or I don't know, love or tendency towards marriage. Let's just say it's sex. Let's make it really simple, no? Kids want to eventually are full of hormones. They will come of age and they want to get busy. Let's be perfectly frank here, no? So they pass the first pole because they want to get busy. So the first pole is passed. However, the second pole in primitive societies, which is the period in which the entire, according to Deleuze and Guattari, the entire structure of the family is determined. That passage of the first pole of the flow of sexuality will be blocked. And as he says, and where something else blocked it and made it pass through the second pole. The example given was that of the rules of alliance in so-called primitive societies, where taboos represent a blockage of the flow of possible marriages. The first permitted marriages, the first permitted incests, called preferential unions, which are in fact hardly ever realized, represent something like the first modes of passage. Something passes, something is blocked, this blockage taking the form of incest taboos. Something passes, the preferential unions, something blocks it and makes it pass, for example, the maternal uncle. So we got to shut down right now because we've talked, as usual, way too much. But once again, the important point here, and I repeat, I don't want to get too lost in this, but this is something very relevant to Deleuze and Guattari's relation to Marxism. As we stated, as the first concept is the flow, the second concept is the poles. So they're saying in primitive societies are the first societies that start coding things, and that will increase throughout history when we get into despotic societies, the king, the church, etc., etc. But in the so-called primitive societies, something had to be coded, and according to Deleuze and Guattari, the flow passes through the first pole, but is then blocked before it can pass through the second pole, because the whole point, I believe, what Deleuze is saying, that coding has to occur, and you need two poles. Something has to enter, okay, you get in free, but then in order to exit, to get out of the second pole, the flow needs to be decoded. So initially, what happens in primitive societies, let's talk about pre-primitive societies. We have the boy, the girl, full of hormones, they get busy, they can have children, no, but if it's all uncoded, like, incest, for example, would be quite popular, no? Because we imagine in pre-primitive societies, are not too big, so cousins, brothers, sisters, everyone is just has uncoded flows. So if you have an uncoded flow, if it's your sister, your brother, your cousin, whatever. I mean, we're just gonna, do what we need to do. I'm gonna get canceled for this for sure, but that's the idea, no? But in primitive societies, they start to code things. So we have the concept of the flow. Therefore, we need the concept of two poles. We have an entrance pole. Okay. For example, brother and sister. You enter the first pole, but the socius, or the family, or the society at large says, look, you are a brother and sister, and therefore you cannot mate together, nor can you get busy or have sex together. That is forbidden. So you've just coded a flow, no? The example, I think the example is pretty good. If without any kind of coding, whatever. I mean, let's get even more vulgar so I can get even more canceled. If I'm not going to go there, but incest was probably generally pretty common. What Deleuze is saying is that they block that in primitive societies. They say incest is not good. It's not cool. You must get together with someone not from your family. So that's the basis of coding itself, according to Deleuze and Guattari, for families. No, before free flows, everyone get busy with everyone. Your sister, your cousin, your grandma. That's extreme. But your mother, whatever, everyone is just uncoded. We're getting busy, and I don't give a fuck, I need to do what I need to do. That's it. But we start at a certain point in primitive societies to say, no, that's not cool. You cannot do that. It depends on the socius, and therefore the socius, what does that mean? It means you can't have sex with your own family members. You cannot marry your own family member. You have to marry other families. That is the socius. That is the full body. That is society. So you've coded things. Marriage, sexuality is getting its first forms of coding in primitive society. It just means. Sounds complicated, but it just means there's rules, no? It means don't bone your sister, or sister don't bone your brother. Don't find people in other families. However, Deleuze is saying, he's going a step further, because I am an idiot, and Deleuze was obviously a genius, an original genius. He says that there are rules of alliance, I believe you call it, alliance, in so-called primitive societies. So taboos represent a blockage of the flow of possible marriages, But at the same time, there were permitted incests, which were called preferential unions. So already think about our coding machine based on concept of flow. In my metaphor, which is vulgar and stupid, everyone just fucks everyone. It doesn't matter. Whoever it is, it could be my family, it could be other people, whatever. It depends on contingency. So everything is uncoded. Then we come to the concept of flows, poles, sorry. So this free flow enters into a pole, which in its concept certainly would have to contain pieces of the idea or concept of the socius. It's the full body of the society. Let's just say for now, a society full body. We'll look at that next time. So thou shalt not copulate with thy sister, cousin, family members, etc., etc. However, at the same time, our free flow of desire has been coded, so incest is not permitted. However, at the same time, we have what we call preferential unions, and this is the words of Deleuze, which are in fact hardly ever realized. So preferential unions are very rare, but they represent, words of Deleuze, represent something like the first modes of passage. Something passes, something is blocked, this block taking the form of incest taboos. Something passes, the preferential unions, something blocks it and makes it pass, for example, the maternal uterine uncle. And we'll look into that. Let's go a little bit further just to make it a little bit clearer. There is, in any case, the determination of an incoming and an outgoing flow. The notion of a pole implicates or is implicated in the movement of flows, and this takes us back to the idea that something flows, something is blocked, that something makes it flow, that something blocks the flow. Antier continues, in the knowledge that the term pole will be given to an individual or firm, so we're back to a kind of economic business related reading with Antier, or alternatively a group of individuals or group of firms, or even a fraction of a firm, we are thereby defining the interceptors of flows. Interceptor, blockage of flows. When the operations carried out by these, the interceptions of flows, so can be described by a coherent accounting system. So thank God we're gonna shut down now. I'm sure. Let's go talk to our vast public. I'm going to write, are you getting bored yet? And I understand you if you are. But once again, Gilles Deleuze is beyond Keynes. He's directly citing an economist, Antier, and he is talking about that the interruption of flows, which Antier called interceptors, which in Deleuzian terms or Deleuzo-Guattarian terms would be a blockage and coding of a flow. Antier is saying that there is an accounting system, and that is the huge, important, big point here. An accounting system, meaning the flow will be blocked by, according to Antier, an accounting system. Let's go a little bit further, because I'd hate to lose this. Hang on, let me relight my cigarette. Yeah. Interesting. Thus, a correlative of the notion of flow is that of an accounting system. So think about entier. Fuck. Oh my god. Sorry, guys, but curiosity kills the cat. Let's see if we can just grab a little bit of information, at least the dates on this entier. Otherwise, we are wandering around in the dark, and we do not want to do that. Ovviamente, obviously, she gives entier. Daniel entier. Daniel. Let's try to understand who this bro was. Daniel entier. Oh my god. I get absolutely nothing. Economist. Huh. Daniel entier. Oh. Non. Entier. Economist politique. Yeah. Uh-huh. No, I find nothing initially on Google on Daniel, which is strange. But we'll look into that. So, as we said, for entier in economics, there are flows and there is accounting. So obviously that's relative to economics, the flow of concrete money, cash, the flow of abstract money, the stock market. But entier talks about flows and accounting systems, and in Deleuzian terms, we could talk about coding systems, and then that's the idea of incest. I believe it's kind of hard to translate Deleuze word by word, but I believe what he's saying is that you have free flows of couples getting together, men, women, and then coding, according to Deleuze, starts with the taboo. Well, according to Deleuze, I think it's even obviously deeper. He's saying that you have already the taboo of incest. However, Deleuze would maintain, I believe, he said here that what the real coding is that between the two poles, you enter the first pole, you're blocked. I hate to go back to my terrible, vulgar metaphor with pissing, basically. You drink, it comes in, it's blocked. So your first pole is your mouth, your second pole is, all of your organs down there related to urinating. So it gets blocked, and I maintain that in some way it kind of gets coded in the meantime. But Deleuze is saying that it is the exception that passes, which is the preferential union. So now, once again, no, it makes sense to me. And once again, this is why if you just read it a few times in his lectures, everything, you always find the first read, don't get it. Do a second, third time, and then everything becomes pretty easy. So, you have three things here. You have a concept of the flow. You have the concept of the poles. Then you have a taboo on incest at the same time. So at a certain point, society discovers, for various reasons, logical reasons, I believe, that incest is not good. However, when the flow of coupling, let's call it, passes the first pole, gets blocked, it can enter the second flow through the preferential union, which happens very, very rarely, which means that incest will be completely blocked, but not completely. A very small percentage of incestual relationships will be permitted to pass the second pole, and therefore that would be the idea of coding. So it's late, and once again, if anyone figures this out, please let me know. It's not going to be too difficult, but so something, it is the preferential union, which is incest, which passes the second pole, while incest will be blocked. However, preferential incest will be permitted. And Deleuze cites one of the reasons of being the maternal uncle. Okay, we can look into that. But I think it's much more simple. Just think of the royal. Why is this thing zooming? Track me, focus on me. Think of the royal family, or the history of royal families. Incest occasionally is something that passes. It is something that is permitted. It is a preferential union when track me, hello. It is something permitted that gets unblocked, while pure incest gets blocked, but in certain cases, preferential unions, like Deleuze says, rarely happen. But maybe, the example is, I don't want to mention the country, but I'm sure a lot of royal families have, been through cases, classical cases of incest in order to maintain the bloodline, or God knows what else. So all this may seem a little bit complicated. We're going to shut down here. It's been interesting, at least for me. I hope for you. And once again, just think about most important point, Web Deleuze, and I will get you the other sites and then download them, because God knows how long these sites are going to be here in the future. But the transcripts of all of Deleuze's lessons to students, not most of them are online. There's, I think, if Vincent has audio transcripts, Richard Pinhas has posted a lot. And so first point, check these sites out. And even on the subject of Marx, there's a lot to be dug up here in Deleuze's lectures on the anti-Oedipe, which we are in fact looking at, but we just kind of got lost, for better for worse, I think for better, into this essential idea of flows. Not just to specifically understand that, it's kind of a tough concept, but also to demonstrate what Isabelle Gare was saying. And she was saying I interpret that as saying that, you can't just say you're Marxist if, you have to qualify it. If you're going to use Karl Marx as a model for the production of the unconsciousness, you just can't have an abstract, generalized notion of production, like, oh yeah, I'm building a car, boom, boom, production line. No. Isabelle is saying he's Fordist, and I'm not sure if I agree with that. I don't know. But she's doing a great job, because she's saying, look, what is the actual, I say he's Fordist, you answer me. What is the actual mode beyond a general Marxist thing, like, well, the consciousness just produces, oh yeah, it's like, no, she's saying how, when, qualified, is it Fordist, is it Kane, it might be like Isabelle says, it might be different, but you have to insist on defining the Marxist mode of production. So also, like, this example in this Deleuze lecture, which I find very, very interesting, is he's kind of talking about the very basis of a concept of production, I believe, saying that, it starts with two concepts. The concepts were the concept of the flow, the concept of poles, and then how things are coded. And the example we used was his example of incest, and how in primitive societies it was coded through, I'm rethinking things, through the taboo of incest. So incest as a flow of family members fucking one another, excuse my French, would have been a taboo. So at a certain point, it was something you could not do. However, this flow of coupling of woman, man, husband, wife, etc., is blocked between the two poles. So it goes in, then on going out, it gets blocked, and then it gets coded. The preferential union gets coded. So a taboo cannot pass the second pole. It stays blocked, because we can't all be incestuous. That would kind of be gross, no? But, however, in certain preferential cases, incest in primitive societies was permitted. And also, I'm saying, like, if you think of royal families, incest is something. If you look at the kingdom of Sicily, the Gattopardo, the Guépard, the Sica, I believe, maybe wrong, but in talking about the decline of the Sicilian Empire in the 1800s, death everywhere, incest everywhere, no? Sicily, which until that point had been the kingdom of Sicily, was decadent, incest, death, the things that had been uncoded. The flows were uncoded. They were taken away by decadence, by too much power, too much abuse of power, and therefore incest, was very common with all the noted problems. However, when it enters in general, when in the concepts, when it enters into the poles, incest can be permitted in special cases. That means, like, cases of caste, or, in the royal family, certain things are permitted between certain families. So incest will be permitted, and therefore the free flow of, let's say, coupling has been coded, but it has been coded between a blockage due to the taboo of incest. However, certain cases of incest can be pushed through the second pole, but only in certain special cases. 1 second, I'll be right back. Let's close up. So, right back here at Pete, everything is very, very complicated, and everyone has to decide for themselves. Let's see if we can get a video camera to join us. Backtrack me. As we've seen in the previous podcast, it's just a nexus of so many currents in France at that time, and then Deleuze's relationship to Marx, Guattari's relationship to Marx, how they create an external relation. So you would also have Deleuze-Guattarian relation to Marx, which is individual and equally as valuable as Deleuze on his own or Guattari on his own. But I think, the point of showing this from the Cours Vincennes, because you can do many, let's just do this very quickly. Oh my God, it's super late. But just go up here in the search bar for this particular lesson. And if I put in Marx, let's see what happens. Oh no, hang on. I wanted to stick to that lesson. Hang on. No, what I have to do is Control F and then do Marx. And he is going to tell me that there are 9 examples of Marx in this first transcribed lecture from 1971 by Gilles Deleuze. So if you go down, just very quickly, I'm not going to get into this, but Marx's Asiatic state emerges in one blow, and all the cogs and wheels of its state apparatus appear synchronically. Marx is the author who demonstrated the radical contingency of the formation of capital. He will go on to explain this. And what else? Marx, we saw that. So yeah, you kind of get the point. No. So we take up Marxist analysis again, an analysis which Marx insists on. The control of production by capital has existed in a certain guise from the beginning, but it appears in another guise with capitalism, etc., etc. Like I said, I'm going to shut things down, but a great resource, Web Deleuze. Next time I will give you the others with more transcripts. And in my opinion, just the best learning resource. If we have to fall back on, third people authors, okay, sometimes it's helpful, but it's much better to go back to the Deleuze, because you find, just think a little bit, do read it 2 or 3 times, and in the end, I guarantee you the things will just be kind of easy. And once again, I just cited the case of flows and incest, because that's kind of the basis of Deleuze, and we do not know, and we will never know how much influence how much of Guattari is involved, in which Deleuze is teaching to his students. Certainly he is involved. We don't know how much, nor will we ever, correctly so. But Deleuze, in what we were reading about the flow, the poles as concepts, That is the kind of the foundation, the very simple base foundation for his own unique reading of Marxist production. So once again, very interesting. I am going to go into a chat and say good night, people. If I can even do that. Good night, people. Once again, either tomorrow or in the next 3 days, we will try and follow up. As always, thanks to our followers, subscribers. I hope we have been some use to you. And as we say to our detractors, and you know who you are, so this shouldn't be very cryptic. Neches Nika Neches Bitigas. So that's for our detractors. And as always, a pleasure. And hope to see you again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.